I thought about moving to Los Angeles from North Carolina. One, before I moved to New York, and two, after this whole COVID debacle.
Yeah.
Just because, it's Hollywood. So there's there's big moves that go on there, and all the production companies and all that kind of stuff is out there. And if you want to get into film and television, that's like the place to be.
Sure. I remember when you were getting ready to move, I was pushing you strong towards LA.
Yeah, and I really was like about to do that. And then I met Dave Chappelle.
Yeah. And his opinion means way more than mine.
Yeah, I met him. This was like when he first started coming back around. Like where it was kind of like you'd hear an announcement like, "Oh, Dave Chappelle is going to be performing at this theater," and you're like, "What? He's going to be performing?" Like it was like seeing him was just like holy shit, he's
back.
He's doing it.
Yeah.
So, went to his show. It was great. Met him after the show, and mind you, Dave, of course, is already famous, but he's not at the now. His fame is just like astronomical,
superstar. Yeah.
But it was a time where you could still like kind of talk to him, and he came to the bar that we were hanging out across the street from the theater at, and I talked to him, and mind you, Dave is like the guy I looked up to, like for comedy. He's like one of the main reasons I do this. One of my strongest influences, and I talked to him. I was like, "Hey, man, like I've been doing comedy for 6 years at that time." And he's like, "Oh, you're a comedian?" I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm curious because I'm in a position where I want to move. I'm trying to decide between Los Angeles and New York." And he was like, "Well, I would go to New York." He's like, "That's where I came up." He's like, "It's a great city. It's a lot of stage time. You'll learn a lot as a comedian. You'll grow a lot as a comedian." And, he just had like general nice advice and words, and it was quick, but it was enough to be like, okay, that solidifies the decision, because I was thinking like LA, nice weather, all that kind of stuff, but I knew in my heart of hearts where it's like I want to go to New York and get great. Like I really want to hone in on this skill of doing stand-up. And I remember talking to you, Trundy, in the Comedy Zone parking lot about this. This was before I met Chappelle, where I was just like, we were having this discussion, and it was like at the time you were talking about leaning towards LA, and I think you had just come back from LA. You had taken like a trip out there, and you were like, you go to LA and it'll happen quick for you. He's like, but if you go to New York, it'll take longer, but you'll be a fucking diamond.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And
I knew that with the level of talent you have. And who you are, that if you would have went to LA, you'd have gotten something big quickly, but New York was going to sharpen you up in the ways that you weren't going to get sharp anywhere else.
Yeah, and I think you need that, like with anything really. It's like you need to go through, I don't know, I guess the proper steps or the paces where it's like you can learn, because anybody can get something quick, but it's like, can you be prepared for it?
Can you handle it?
Yeah. And I'd rather like have the experience, first off, and like the tools. Like you're just adding additional tools to your belt as you go along.
Yeah.
And then once you're there, it's like, all right, now I'm actually prepared to do these things that are at a bigger level.
Right.
Which is what I'm hoping to do next with the progression of the career and everything. But it definitely, like, you can see a difference between somebody that's spent time in New York and really had to hone in on their craft, performing in front of those crowds, versus somebody that hasn't, or like somebody that comes from LA. And I'm not like saying that to like,
LA is just more laid back. Though,
it's very laid back.
Yeah.
And I'm not like trying to start like the LA versus New York battle of.
I mean, when you come from different areas, you have different accents.
Exactly.
It is just what it is.
Yeah.
And so the way you're strong in New York is different than the way you're strong in LA.
It definitely is. And like LA crowds are very like, they like, haven't seen them and perform it, it seems like they're very forgiving.
Yeah.
Like they allow certain things material wise to like get laughs, where I'm like,
It's a happier place.
Yeah,
though, right?
it is. Like, everybody's high. Everybody spent the day at the beach.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, anything's funny to you.
In
like
New
New
York,
York, it's
you
like,
just saw somebody take
yeah,
a shit on the
exactly,
sidewalk,
yeah,
and that's the host
yeah,
of the open
exactly,
mic.
Yeah, it's like I just watched this guy jump in front of a train. Had to fist fight a rat for a sandwich, and now you're sitting here wanting to talk to me about your dating life. It's like, come with it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, it just makes you sharper.
Yeah.
It just makes you sharper.